you still wake up and just write whatever comes into your head? Is that still a part of your daily routine?
Some day it depends. Some days I wake up and just kind of, just like free write the first few things that come into my head. Other times, like I'll wake up in the middle of the night with like a solid like melody or tune in my head. I'll record that into my phone, or it might be a lyric from something that's actually quite shit that's just come into my head, but I like one line or something like that. But it's weird. Like if it happens when I'm dreaming, I can hear like a full song, like drums, bass, key, like everything's there. And then the moment I wake up, I forget like 50% of it, and then I'm like, okay, try and work out what I was hearing.
Is there a pattern in what half you remember, or is it just completely random?
No, if there is, I haven't picked up the pattern yet. It normally ends up being like a 10-second line that I kind of keep, and then will adjust to fit into something else if I am like when I'm working on a song.
That's interesting. Would it often relate to a song you're working on?
No, I wouldn't say they are like specifically, but I can often find ways to make lyrics work by changing one or two words. Or do
you still use Headspace every day as well?
Not as much as I'd like to. Yeah, I do every now and then. Yeah, but I used to use it a lot more than I do now. But I need to get back into that routine.
The reason I'm asking about all these daily kind of habits, I got this book today. I've got it here. People can't see this. You can see it. Daily Rituals.
Yeah.
So it's like 100 creatives like Picasso, Beethoven, all that kind of jazz. And it looks into their kind of daily routines and the things they would do every day to channel their creativity.
Sick.
Well, I was wondering, like, what are some of the daily habits or structures that you put in place yourself to allow your creativity to flourish? Is there anything you do?
I've discovered walking during lockdown. I went for loads of walks. I don't normally start like if I've got a day where I can just write like at home and I'm not like going to the studio and working on like something with someone, or if I'm just writing at home, I'll wake up, go for a long walk. I've fallen back in love with cigarettes and coffee more than ever. So I'll have a few coffees and a few cigarettes. And I just go for these long walks and always bring my notepad and pen. It comes with me wherever I go. I end up coming back with sometimes it's like one or two lines. Sometimes I've filled 3 pages of stuff. Yeah, it just depends on the day. But I don't really force anything. That I have these periods of time where I'm like, I'll write like 10 tunes in the space of 2-3 months, and they're like kind of pretty much done. And then I'll go through like 1 or 2 months where I just haven't written anything. But I don't like try and write anything. I just don't. It's like I don't want to, or I don't just naturally do it. So yeah, I think I don't force anything. I just kind of go for a walk and see what happens.
Would you still go for a walk in that 1 or 2 months when you're not writing?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, but probably less so, because I it's not like I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk and write, which is the main reason I get up early and go like for a big old walk.
How far are we talking?
Do you know what? I've been walking around like the whole of Richmond Park during lockdown, which takes 3-4 hours, and then going back home as well. Yeah, so long. It takes up a big portion of the day, and then I get back and put these take these ideas out of the book and try and put them into song.
It's almost like pre-production for songwriting.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah, and then it's not like everything gets used. So I kind of go every now and then. I'll just flick through my book and just kind of go, oh, that's quite cool, or I could play with this idea, or yeah.
Is it always like lyrical stuff that you're coming up with, or would you ever come up with other ideas just in general, like creative ones?
There's a lot of musical ideas that happen as well. Like, so my voice memos on my phone is just like full of me going like just utter shit. But that's it. Yeah, I think in terms of creative output, music is the only thing I'm focused on at the moment. So I don't really get any other idea, unless it's for a music video. But I haven't really done any kind of mediums in a long time.
Are you still doing like your clothing curation and stuff, or is that all done now?
Yeah. I'm still. So I'm back there now that the shops are open. I still work with my mate as a buyer. which is quite nice. And like, yeah, choose the clothes for the store for the next 8 months and stuff like that. Or like, well, it's done like seasonal. So we're just about to start buying the spring, summer stuff for next year.
So you do like a year in advance?
Yeah, pretty much. And then I'm just about to start a vintage collection for either for sale or for like, because some of the pieces are quite obscure. So I'm trying to set up like a vintage collection that people can borrow and stuff for shoots and stuff like that. But yeah, there's more of that to come. But I'd love to link that up with my merch and provide something that's more sustainable than getting t-shirts made in fucking Indonesia.
When you say more obscure, what sort of stuff we're talking?
Oh, like for example, I've got this mad sniper's jacket that looks like something out of Mad Max. It's got like almost like rubber tires on the elbows for when like obviously a sniper would just be like lying down for 8 hours. Yeah, so it's like it's mad.
Very practical.
Yeah. And like it does up with like it's like buckles across, almost like a straight jacket. It's the weirdest looking thing. And then I got there's this massive kind of almost like a tiger print camo that it's a Russian winter liner thing. That's pretty cool.
How do you find this stuff?
I just find it all online, or in like it's either online or in some kind of hotspot vintage shops in either Brick Lane or Margate or Hastings. Yeah, that's something I love to do when I've got a bit of free time. Is like I'll go to a town that's got some decent antique shops and vintage shops with my girlfriend. The Kensington Market's a good one as well. And you just have stuff that people have had for years that are like just the most bizarre pieces of clothing that I think are really cool. If you could put them in kind of like in a contrast space, like you'd never see someone wearing like that sniper's jacket I mentioned on the tube, like that kind of thing. Bringing those things to contemporary life is something that I think is quite a cool idea.
Just creating that juxtaposition.
Yeah. I think that comes through in some of my songs as well. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I think over time I've realized that even if the song is a happy feeling tune, my lyrics are always just like negative. Yeah, I don't know what it is, man.
It's a little bit harder to write from a happy place.
I think so. Yeah,
particularly motivating.
Yeah, if you're happy, you got nothing to get off your chest.
You were saying as well that you'll quite often go to antique shops. Are you just into vintage clothing, or do you like other kind of antiquities and vintage stuff?
I got into taxidermy. Like, I'm really into taxidermy at one point, and I started doing it myself. And then I kind of thought, I kind of started...
It's a little bit Norman Bates.
Yeah, I kind of, started second guessing it a bit. But yeah, that was something I was kind of collecting for a while. Like I got one of those two-headed duckling things that people were making and stuff like that. And then I did...
Wait, hold that. Two-headed duckling?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think they're real. I think they're like... Some taxidermist has just been doing them. I don't know, man.
Wait, so they take two ducks that have been taxidermist and they take the head off of one and put it onto the other one, so it's got two heads?
I think so. And I'd like to think it's all been done ethically. I'm sure it has. Who in their right mind is going to start killing ducklings out there? I don't think that's going to happen. I'd hope not anyway. Yeah. But yeah, so I was really into that at one point, and now obviously I'm not. I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm like into antiques, but if there's something old and really bizarre, I'm gonna want to buy it and keep it for something.
What are you into at the moment? Because every interview I was reading with you, you seem to have a different kind of thing every few months that you're obsessed with it. That's really grabbing your attention.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. I find I get really fixated on something, and just that's all I think about. What am I fixated on at the moment? I don't know, man. I think I've been so focused on getting as much material together as I can for the last 6 to 8 months that I haven't really had any time for anything else. Also, we've been in lockdown, so I don't think I've really had the opportunity to go out and discover anything. I'm just enjoying pubs being open at the moment. Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying though about lockdown, and you haven't had the opportunity to discover stuff. So when you get one of these obsessions, is it very much just something you would stumble across in the real world and then kind of go in the rabbit hole?
Yeah, it's normally something like I'd see in a market or in a shop, or like have a conversation with someone about. I don't really talk to anyone when I'm at home. So I only talk to people when I'm with them, really. So yeah, it's normally like these things stem from a conversation to turn into this obsession.
Is that like curiosity and your creativity? Are they coming from the same place, or are they different places?
Maybe. I try to use songwriting as like a form of escapism. So I'm very much of the belief that, you know, you can write about whatever you want to write about and be whatever kind of character you want to be in your song. So maybe it's just another kind of escapism thing, or moving on to the next thing, or being something else, or yeah.
What other traits kind of feel essential to creativity for you, other than curiosity?
I think being able to understand how you're feeling at that time. I think it's hard to write a song with any kind of meaning if you're not necessarily feeling something. If you're not feeling happy, or you're not feeling sad, or you're not feeling like, I don't know, feeling nothing, or just like quite content, or like, then there's nothing, you've got nothing to write about. You have to be like thinking about something, or have something bothering you, or have something that's really making you happy. And you have to know that, and you have to know when you're feeling that way and understand what it is that's making you feel like that. I think being in tune with your emotions is important, whether you can change them or not, but just recognizing them.
Do you feel like you can change them? Do you have more control once you get that level of understanding over them?
I think it's easier to understand how you're feeling and then make it worse, like on purpose. Like people that are sad will listen to sad music, whereas it's normally a friend of theirs that's saying, right, come on, put this song on, let's go. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever been sad and just listened to a really sad album? And
stick on Elliott Smith.
Yeah. You just make yourself feel so much worse. Or you watch a really sad film.
I don't know, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Like wallowing in it a little bit.
Yeah. You deserve it. Everyone deserves it. Like, if you feel like that, just embrace it, good or bad. But yeah, I think that's more of a likely outcome, is someone working at, like, recognizing how they feel and exacerbating it, rather than recognizing how they feel and trying to change it or feel the opposite.
I also think, although you're saying it makes you feel worse maybe doing that, I think in the long run it's probably better, because if you just wallow in it and let it pass, if you try and fight it, often it can end up going on longer.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get that frustration and it starts being a tussle.
Yeah. I completely agree. Let it out. Like, people that suppress everything and keep a brave face and you know, never shed a tear and stuff like that. They're like, that's a ticking time bomb, man.
It's interesting what we were saying there about, you know, listening to someone else's music as a way of wallowing in emotions. I don't like the word wallowing. It's a little bit negative. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah. No, it's a great word.
But if you're making music when you're in a really deep emotional state, does it kind of amplify it further, whatever you're feeling?
In the initial process, yeah. Like in the initial writing process. And then I think when I start to focus on production a bit more, I'm less thinking about the song itself and more kind of what kind of zone I want it to be in. And then once I'm out of that process and I'm happy with the tune, that's when I'll like get back to that kind of just listening to it and feeling something from it again. I listen to my own music like when they're demos all the time. And then the moment I know that it's going to end up on a project, or it's like, I'm putting this song out, I never listen to it. I never listen to my own music that's like I've put out. I don't know. I think it's because I'm never 100% happy with, like, there's always or not that I'm not happy, but it's like, there's always another option that could have been chosen here or there. So it's like, and I'm just so indecisive that I'm like, okay, this is the final version. This is the only one that's out. And that's, so I've done that now. I'll put that to bed. And then I'll listen to 20 tunes that may never get released.
Say by the time you get to listen to it for the 30th time or whatever, a specific demo, do you notice new things, or is a point where it kind of levels off?
I either get ideas from it and I'm like, okay, I'll change this or get rid of that, or I love this, or actually I hate that, or I just enjoy listening to it and feeling the tune.
Do you remember the moment when you started thinking about music in a way that it went beyond simply listening to it and it became this deeper thing for you?
Ever since learning the guitar, I've always wanted to be a performing musician. So I started learning when I was 10, and then like I would dream about playing like Jimi Hendrix. My first guitar teacher like got me into Hendrix, and I was like, okay, this is like, started watching videos of Jimi Hendrix, and I was like, that is what I want to do. But then before that, musically, I just loved the music I was listening to. Just know the words, and like I used to listen to all my dad's old CDs. So it's either like soul, Motown stuff, like Marvin Gaye, Bobby Womack, Isaac Hayes. It was all either that stuff or his like punk CD collection, which was like the Stranglers and Iggy Pop and the Clash, and then like kind of Talking Head stuff as well. So like, that would have been between the ages of 4 and 10.
Wow. When
I was just listening to like my dad's music. So obviously I didn't know what I was listening to. I just loved the feeling of kind of, I suppose, the contrast between like Marvin Gaye and then Iggy Pop, and the fact that they were only really like, they were 70s, and Iggy Pop. So they weren't, in terms of chronologically, they weren't worlds apart, but musically they were. And I think I loved the contrast between all this different music and how it kind of made me feel. So that, I guess that's all I was thinking about. And then it was when I started learning guitar that I was like, okay, actually, like the stuff that I've been listening to, maybe I could do that. And then, I just started learning guitar and then performing at school. When I was like, I think I started singing in the school band when I was like 14. And that was something I didn't really think about. But I had my mate was a singer in the school band, and then he left the school. And for me at the time, it wasn't like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to sing, or who's going to sing? I just kind of thought, well, someone's got to do it. So I'll just sing it, I guess. And then I just started doing that. So I never, in that sense, in terms of like being a singer, I never really thought about it, but I knew I always wanted to be a performing artist or be a musician. I think maybe that's why I don't consider myself a singer, but I'd like to think I'm much just like an artist rather than a singer, a performing singer.
I think now as well, singer has that kind of connotation of the X Factor thing.
Well, yeah, I think that, they fucked it for us. Yeah, like the voice and stuff like that. Like, yeah. And, but also, like, I've met a few people that were on The Voice like years ago at jam sessions in London and stuff that I used to go to, and they are all like, they never really wrote their own music. They'd all do like function gigs or like covers gigs, and so they were just singers rather than like creating something.
It's a weird line, because you look at someone like, Little Mix obviously came to the X Factor. And then we're kind of in a similar position where they didn't write their own stuff, but then they pick up the Brit Award.
Yeah, I was like,
it's like you don't quite know how to frame it in your mind, because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, it's good that it's the first kind of female act winning that award, but at the same time, they don't write their own stuff. There's someone like Celeste, for example.
Well, yeah, fucking
would have been a better choice.
100%. Like, there are so many other female artists that like should have got that. But I mean, the Brits is basically who sold the most awards, isn't it? It's like, yeah, who's got the highest numbers? It's a load of shit. I'd say the best awards shows at the award ceremonies out there, like, I reckon the Mercury Prize is the one. Like, it's always, the winner is always something controversial. It's always like,
they always have a weird one in there as well. Like, and when I say weird, I mean they always throw one in that's slightly more standard and kind of mainstream, which is a bit confusing too.
Yeah. But there's always a huge group of people that go, oh yeah, they definitely should have won that Mercury Prize, and then there's always a huge group of people that are like, oh, that was the wrong decision and stuff. But it's always music that is definitely of a thing. It's not like music in its lowest common denominator that's just there to please everyone. It's controversial and it's subjective and it's
very individual voices always get nominated.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you kind of mentioned a while back the CDs that you found, your dad's CDs that you kind of listened to and read through. And it's interesting that we can still see that influence in your music today, particularly with the soul stuff. You still see that coming through. Like, we always seem to be drawn back to these childhood influences, and the first thing we became attracted to. What is that? Why do you think that is, that we're always, even though it was 20 years ago, you still come back to that in your music today?
I think that happens to me for two reasons. I think I was in a band for a long time, and that was like indie rock. So I felt like at that time I was just doing music that I was interested at the time. I wasn't really doing the music that I grew up on, or like the music that is actually kind of ingrained in me and is the music that taught me music. So I feel like I'm doing more of a soul route now, because it's been suppressed for so long. But I'm a very nostalgic person anyway. I have temporal lobe epilepsy, which is it's all memory based. So I get these kind of episodes of like really heavy deja vu or nostalgic episodes that kind of make me have a simple partial seizure, or it's like an overwhelming feeling that is either a memory or something that I think happened, or may or may not have happened to me, that kind of can either like stop me in my tracks or like make me kind of collapse. So yeah, I think memory is something that I'm always kind of drawn to. And then in my music, in my songwriting, I'm always kind of taking the memory and playing on it, or like making a story from an emotion that I remember, or like a moment that I remember.
Do you kind of just would you ever translate a memory completely directly, or do you kind of take inspiration from it and maybe accentuate it a little bit and twist it to make it more suitable for what you want it to say?
I'd say it's more of a taking inspiration from a memory and making it something more interesting, putting a spin on it to make a good story. Like
a rumor?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I guess that kind of brings us to Smoke Without Fire.
Yeah, for sure. It's that was a song about people just chatting shit. Yeah, just different rumors circulating, and then obviously like just not being able to deal with it. And
did you feel that increasing in lockdown when we had that kind of disconnection?
I guess so. Maybe that's what, like, I mean, yeah, I haven't had to deal with like shit like that since I was a teenager. So yeah, maybe everyone being locked down made everyone regress a bit into the teenage years, and just
yeah, people like to gossip.
Yeah, it's weird that every now and then I'm guilty of it. Oh yeah, did you hear what this person did last week? And then I'm like,
it's a social thing though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think everyone likes to be in the know. Everyone likes to be part of the club of like knowing what's happened. But yeah, but when it happens about you, it's just, it's never funny. It's just not acceptable.
It's irritating, yeah. See the vocal sample at the start of that, when you bring in the vocal with the kind of effects on it.
Well, the ooh, ooh.
It's a kind of repetition of the chorus, but in a slightly different form.
Oh, yeah.
Is that you treating your vocal, or is that a sampler? What's going on?
Do you know what? That was, do you mean the ooze or the, I don't know what's going on? That thing.
Yeah.
That was, so that was, I was tracking the vocal for a demo version of that in, that was just in the shed at my girlfriend's house. And I was like, before I do a take, I was just kind of like practicing that line before the song dropped in, and then like get into the verse and then get into the chorus. Then listening back, but I think because I did it quite far away from the mic, so it sounded like a kind of like a room mic passing thing. I thought, oh, actually, that's quite cool. Like, I'd like to keep that in the song. So we kept that from the demo vocal. We kept that in there. But I don't think, as far as I can remember, it's not massively manipulated. It's just recorded in a really shitty environment that's made it sound really cool.
It's fun to play around with flaws in that way.
Yeah. I'm using like broken stuff all the time in recordings because it just sounds so when you catch it at the right time and in the right moment, it's like, okay, that's made the song. Like I did a tune I was writing with Benny Giles a few weeks ago, he's a producer who's just done played a massive part in Leanne La Havas's last album as a producer. So we're working on this tune, and I had this riff that I wanted to put in the intro and in the choruses. I was playing it on my guitar, and then he pulled out this guitar. It was quite similar, but it was really old. It was apparent. He was saying you can get them you used to be able to get them in Walmart for like $50, and they were these trash guitars. But now they're like, I think like Jack White swears by them. Like he uses them all the time, and now they're worth like $5,000 and shit like that. But so I was using that, and it sounded broken. It was like cracking, and it was like the sustain on each note is so inconsistent. Then listening back, you're like, yeah, that sounds cool as fuck.
It's the same kind of thing like shooting on film, isn't it? All these kind of slightly, or VHS, these slightly distorted mediums, but there's something cool about them.
Yeah. It's funny how people have come back to VHS and film when it's, you know, like the clarity is just not, you know, it's not like 4K or like anything like that. But I think people will always be drawn to things in their original form or their early forms, because they're often a lot more hands-on, and they actually require a lot more skill to use and make right.
I think it's as well the fact that it's like a practical thing. It's a physical thing when everything now feels so digitized and not really present. People want like something that's like would have been on a videotape, for instance.
Yeah.
Like physical film.
Yeah, like you can film anything on your phone, and it's like, and there's nothing special about that. But having to, you know, get a camera, put a tape in it, get it right, get the lighting right, get the focus right, and it's like.
Have you ever recorded the tape? No,
I haven't. I'd love to, but I've never had the opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity yet.
If you're recording on digital stuff, will you set down limitations like that to kind of box yourself in a little bit so that creativity can flourish?
What do you mean by like box it in, kind of?
Maybe that wasn't the right phrase, but like what we were saying about how there's a certain restriction to shooting on film, like you need a certain light and you need a certain ISO, whatever. Are there ways that you can kind of replicate that musically? Because people will be more creative with a film camera if they have restrictions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think it depends on like, I've become a lot more collaborative in the way that I've been working recently, and I've been working with loads of different producers to get just different flares on my songs and stuff like that. So I've noticed a huge difference in like the productivity of a day when I've had some sessions where I'm working with a producer that's like, okay, like we're only going to use sounds from the instruments I've got in the room. So, and they'll often have like amazing keyboards, and they'll have like 6 of them, and like guitars and amps and pedals and like different percussive instruments and stuff like that. And all of that is like really kind of organic, and it makes you think a lot more about what you're doing. And then there are other producers that kind of, it's all very much working on their laptop with a MIDI keyboard and a few other bits. And it's like from there, obviously you've got an entire universe of plugins and effects and sounds and digital instruments that you can use, and you can do anything you want to do. And it takes a lot longer to find the right sound and find what you're looking for that way than limiting yourself to the room that you're in and the instruments that you have, and focusing on the sounds you can get from those in the room.
How would that actually affect the song itself? Like when you set those limitations down, what shape are you kind of taking it into the studio in? And then how does it change it once you put those restrictions in place?
I think it depends. Sometimes I walk in with a song like ready to go, especially if I've never worked with this producer before. I tend to walk in with a tune that I've written and be like, okay, this is the song. Like let's get it sounding like this other song of mine, or let's get it sounding like this tune or whatever. And then from there, if we've gotten along, or like, yeah, the session's gone well, then I'm like kind of open to writing from scratch with other musicians. But I definitely prefer to just like shut myself off and write the skeleton of this tune myself, and then focus on the instrumentation with different producers.
What did the skeleton of something like Concrete look like? Because that really explodes once that saxophone comes in. Was that something that was already kind of an idea that was permeating around your brain in the early stages? No,
not at all. That was just chords and melody. Let me try and I might have it as a voice note. No, let me try. No, do you know what? This is going to take me fucking ages.
That's what I say. How many voice notes have you got on the phone?
Like literally, it goes back to like 2018. I'm gonna try and land on something, and if it's not that, then I'll find it, and I'll send it to you if I find it.
Was that the thing?
Nope, not that. Yeah, I'll find it. But yeah, that was I had it was just chords and lyrics, like chords and melody, and that was it. And then I sent the tune to Jeff Hazing, who is based in Toronto, and he was like, "Hey man, like, yeah, let's put some drums and some bass on this, and like maybe a sax." I was like, "Yeah, sick." Like, yeah, man, I can try. My guy's in London, and he was like, "Yeah, my friend just plays sax. Like, I'll put him on a tune." And he did. It was just it blew my mind. When it came in, I was like, "Oh shit!"
How's that changed the emotion of the song for you?
I think because I wrote the tune, it's like I think more about how it makes me feel having that in my song. So I hear it and I'm like, it's like, yes. But I think it definitely helped paint that image that I kind of wanted to. I wanted to have this kind of image of like, but I wanted the whole EP to have this kind of London nightlife feel that I guess I was missing a lot during lockdown. The way that sax comes in just paints that image of like that lonely sax player under a street light in the fog kind of thing that you could just imagine on a couple of streets in Soho.
Bleeding Gums Murphy.
Yeah, that it definitely paints that image.
How did that function as well for something like See You Soon, where the kind of narrative of it takes on the shape, like you're saying, of this nightlife this evening, where things kind of change throughout? How did you want to replicate that sonically in the song? That narrative that you have kind of running throughout it?
Well, I think that, so you have like this idea of the song, and then you can use different sounds to accentuate different lines or emotions. So like in the intro, you've got that la 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 la. That's kind of like, it sounds like a bad influence. It sounds like someone going, "Oh, come over here, come back to us." And then like the end of the second verse, "This is your last warning," and then that siren comes in and goes, "Woo!" And it's like that for me was like, that's like a massive prang of anxiety that just comes in out of nowhere. And then there's like, yeah, you've got those gang vocals, the lie kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely, once you've got like a solid theme and solid ideas for the song, being able to use that instrumentally to your advantage, I think can do wonders. And even if it's just you as an artist that knows that, like little things like that, give yourself kind of, I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Are you quite a visual writer? Like what you're just saying there, where you associate every sonic change in that song with a kind of image in your mind, whether it's someone you're pulling you to the side of the, what did you use the expression for the sirens again? Like the kind of anxiety coming in.
Like
you seem to have an image that corresponds with like every kind of shift in the song.
I think it depends on the tune. I think some songs are more visually solid than others. But when I'm writing, I like to have something visual there. So I'll sit at home and have like a different film on. Sometimes that can like change the vibe of the song. Just like, I just sit, I'm not even really watching it or listening to it. I'm just playing the guitar, but it's like, there's something just in the background that's kind of, I think it's healthy to have personally, when I'm writing, I like to kind of be 70% into writing the song and 30% my brain is like kind of doing something else. It stops you getting burnt out, and it also kind of means that things happen more naturally and you're not like focused on one idea so much that you end up working on a really shit idea for ages. It like keeps you open to different sources of input. Yeah, I like to have something to watch while I'm writing.
Is that kind of coming from the same idea as you're walking? Like
I guess
allowing your mind to focus on something off? Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's exactly it. Like whether I write a lot on public transport as well. So like having that kind of like people watching or like focusing on getting from A to B, or I very, very rarely write lyrics or like finish lyrics just sat down in a room. I'll always kind of write them when I'm doing something or on the go, or kind of half in, half out.
What's Wabi Sabi as well? I've heard that's a philosophy you kind of take a little bit of inspiration from.
Yeah, like Wabi Sabi is a Japanese concept of kind of accepting the imperfections in everything. So like Wabi Sabi is a huge tool used in architecture and design. I mean, you wouldn't want imperfections in a
structure,
really important skyscraper structure. Yeah. But like in terms of like the design of a building or sculpture or room, it's something that's used a lot, and kind of having things asymmetrical, asymmetry and stuff like that. So in terms of recordings and songs, I'm drawn to like the first takes of a vocal, or like the first takes of a guitar, just because that's like when the raw emotion was in there the most. Sometimes I build up to it, and I have a couple practice runs, but very often it's the first or second take that like may or may not be right. Maybe there's a bum note in there, or like the delivery on one of the words isn't quite right. But if the emotion is there, like I'd rather have that than have something that is like ticks all the boxes on paper. Yeah. So I think having that kind of concept in songs helps keep things more human as well. Like there's so much, I feel like there's so many songs out there that are like, or like too perfect. Like they're pitch perfect throughout. And like, there's not like one, or like there's not a rhythmic thing going on that's like, you know, maybe it drags a little bit, or like that. I mean, if you look at D'Angelo, for example, like the drums that he had on all of his records are behind the beat, but that's what makes it kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, it that adds an emotion to the track when it's not.
Adds an anticipation.
Exactly. And it gives you this kind of, just makes you groove to it. And it's like, and it's things like that are like imperfect, but make the thing what it is.
I wasn't familiar with what that concept was, but now that you've said it, we could relate it to like what you were saying about the $50 Walmart guitars, or what you were doing with the vocals at the start of Smoke Without Fire.
Yeah,
like picking up on these little moments and putting a bit of focus on them.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and it just keeps us more. It keeps us more human. No one is perfect. Everyone can be a fucking idiot at times, and I guess that helps with that acceptance, having mistakes in there and having like happy accidents.
Does it help with the last song on the EP compared to someone else, this idea of constantly comparing yourself and how damaging that can be? Is that less of a problem once you accept mistakes and kind of find the beauty in them? I
guess so, but I think it's also a song written in a headspace of like I think I definitely cared what people think a lot more than I should have. And that was that kind of like worrying about what people think about you too much. And like, and even that song itself, I spent ages kind of wrestling with the vocal in my head, because I'm still not 100% on the vocals in like my take on that. Like I can hear like a mistake here and there, and then I'm like, no, that adds to the kind of the vulnerability of the kind of the lead point of view for that song. It helps the whole thing feel much more vulnerable, and it adds to the emotion of the song. And the kind of, there's a worry in there because the vocal's a bit shaky at points, and it's like, it sounds really innocent, even if it's not 100% pitch perfect.
It comes back to, we could look at what you were saying about, you know, in architecture with Wabi Sabi, the structure needs to be there, and it needs to be able to stand up as a building and function. But you can have these little imperfections that make it more interesting. Like you could look at that in terms of the balance of what you need in a song. Like you can't throw in too many mistakes, but if you just do it slightly, it can improve it and strengthen it.
But I think that's the difference. Like that's where you have the boundaries between songwriting and production. Is like you have the structure or the skeleton of any song is how good it is. If someone were to just play it on a guitar and sing it, or play it on a piano and sing it, and if it's a good song, it will stand on its own, and you'll still have people singing it back to you, and like, or people remembering the song, or like if it's a strong song. And then all the production and other stuff comes after that, all the other layers, all the like drums, bass, horns, like afterthought. But the having that original structure and the bare bones of the song, having them as strong as they can be, is in my opinion the most important.
With what you were saying as well about maybe once upon a time caring too much about what people thought of you, is that what drew you to the Sean Scully monologue on the last EP and him kind of speaking out against self-doubt?
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, I go through those stages on and off like anyone does. Like you just have these times where you're like, am I doing the right thing? Have I like made the right life choices and shit like that? But like, and I think that's another, we're all fucking human. Yeah, there's definitely a link between those two songs and the Scully intro and compared to someone else. Yeah.
At what point after you heard that monologue did you notice the musicality of his voice? Is that something you pick up on straight away, or is it something that comes with time?
No, that was kind of that. I heard his voice in that documentary, and I just none of my mates are particularly into Sean Scully or had heard of him really, even though he's kind of been around for ages. I just wanted people to hear what he had to say. So I heard him say it and recorded it. I started writing this thing in the studio that was just that dun, 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 that chord sequence. And I didn't really I knew that the chord sequence was a bit obscure to have as a song with like in a proper structure, but I really loved the way it just revolved around in itself. So I got Misha and Lawrence in to come and do the horns and stuff. And then knowing that was kind of an instrumental thing, I thought, okay, well, how about having it as like an intro and having Sean Scully on there? And then I kind of wrote that little verse at the end that's like an interpretation of the message that he was saying.
How does Bukowski influence you as well? But we're talking about artists that kind of inspire you.
A lot of those writers, like Bukowski was a little bit earlier, obviously, than the rest of the Beat generation and Kerouac and stuff. But I think I discovered an interest in them because they just made me care less about what people think and care less about having a solid income and having security around you, and actually just focusing on things that you want to do and focus on your art and focus on being creative and focus on they're all so much in the now, in the present. Like none of their books are really, I mean, they're all semi-autobiographical, literally, but they're not, in terms of the writings themselves, they're not that reflective. They're very much like, now I'm working here and now I'm getting pissed. Now I'm doing this. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's very in the present. And I think that's what I liked about Bukowski, and that's what I like about other Beat generation writers, is it's kind of like Headspace. It brings you back in the room and it puts you in the now. But I find it kind of helps me focus on the now and not care about it makes me care about the right things and stop caring about shit that doesn't matter.